All right, class. First off, as always, good day. I'm glad you're here. Really quickly, before we begin, if you see me yawning or kind of grunting a little bit, I do apologize. I just had the second shot like a couple days ago, and I am still extremely tired, and my body is aching. So, especially my neck is really, really bad. So if you see me kind of grunting or groaning a little bit, I do apologize. It's just the shot is just kicking my butt. All right. So today we're going to be looking at the weapons that were used not only on land but also in the sea and in the air. This is a new thing that was um, it's revolutionary at the time. Okay, so let's look at the objectives. So today we're going to analyze the significance of new and improved weapons land weapons used in World War One. We're going to examine the importance of new and improved weapons in the air and the sea. Okay, now the sea battles have happened before, but as you're going to see, they've gotten better. And we're going to create an argument on whether one country got punished a lot more than other countries. Okay, we're going to be looking at that. Also, too, if you have U.S. history and world history, um, basically the lessons are kind of the same because we're now intertwined together at this one point. The lessons basically all the same except for the warm up. The warm up is different for each class. Okay, so if you have right now world history and you have U.S. history, if you look at that lecture video, basically it's going to be the same thing. The timing might be a little bit different and some of that. Maybe the explanations might be a little bit more different. But overall, it's the same stuff. It's just the warm-ups are different. And if that's the case, at the end, um, your exit ticket, you should answer the other question. Because remember, there's usually two questions I ask you guys. So if you answered one for one, you should answer the other in the other class. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So here's your warm-up picture. There's three questions. The first one asks you, what is the large hand, the one in the far left corner, upper left corner, what is it pointing at? Okay. The second question asks you, what happened to the peace of Europe? Okay. So if you look carefully, I know it kind of cut off a little bit, but you can get the idea of what happened. And the third question asks you, according to the little men in this picture, who's to blame for it? Who's to blame for this problem? So look at them and basically look like who who's to blame for this. Okay. So pause the video. Um, uh, write your response. But we're moving on in 3, 2, 1. All right, so during World War One, a new system of fighting had changed from the days of the old. Back in the day, they used to stand up in the line and aim and fire. That was called the gentleman's way of fighting. But as time went on, people were like, "Well, that's kind of dumb," because now there's Gatling guns, there's multiple bullets, guns now instead of just back in the day was load up, put the powder in, fire, things like that. So new tactics had to be taken into consideration, particularly guerrilla warfare. Um, and the thing is that was revolutionary was now land or war was fought on land, in the sea, and now in the air. Okay, new inventions were popping up too. They not only created new things, but they also improved old weaponry, and this was huge for both sides because not only did it help the other side, kill a lot of the enemy, it also had a lot of their people get killed too. And we're gonna be talking about that. In total, though, about 9 to 10 million soldiers died. Okay, about 21 million were wounded. But here's the big kicker: about a total of close to 10 million civilians were killed during the war. So that's like just as many soldiers that were killed. But these are civilians. These are people who are not soldiers. They're just fell victim to war. They died from either bombs going off near them because of the war came to them. Um, they either starved to death, because they're cut off from food, cut off from um, supply lines, things like that, and disease. Disease spread rampant, so a lot of people died. And here's another fun, well, not fun, but it's kind of like an interesting fact. In both countries, France and Germany, remember they're on opposite sides of each other, they sent off about 80% of their males from 15 to 49. So, 4 out of 5 of them um, went off to war. So that's pretty interesting little fact. All right, so we're going to look at the land inventions and land improvement weapons first. The first one's the rifle. Okay, now they had a new gun called the repeater rifle. Okay, which is this top picture on top. You see, this is a bolt action repeater. Basically, what happened is back in the day, if you remember, like I told you, you'd have to put the powder, the bullet, stuff it in there, get the flintlock, put on top, flick, click, bam. A good man fired 3 shots in a minute. Now with these repeaters, they can shoot all 5 in, geez, like 30 seconds if they wanted. Wouldn't be accurate probably, but they could probably shoot them all off, you know. Um, the thing that made the difference was that the powder and the primer, they were already in the bullet. So all you had to do was just hit it and so that's where the trigger and the hammer and all that stuff comes in. The next thing was the cavalry. Horses were still used. Now they were seen as obsolete. It's like, well, why have horses? We're not like back in the day with the standing in the line and shooting. We're in trenches and there's bombs going off. Well, both sides still felt, the people in charge felt that horses could still run faster than men. They can jump holes, craters bigger than any other man could. Um, and they still didn't want to get rid of that tactic of having a cavalry, having men on horses. Thing is, guys, a lot of horses died. I mean, we're talking millions of horses died in combat. They would get shot up, they would get blown up, things like that. So again, if you see the movie 1917, the very, very beginning when they're in the no man's land, you see some horses, dead bodies of horses around. Like I said, it's a very accurate depiction of the no man's land in that movie. So if you have a chance, check that out really quick. Look on YouTube. Look at the no man's land in that movie. Excuse me. Machine guns. This was another big one. There was heavy machine guns called the Maxim and the Hotchkiss. These were heavy duty machine guns that required 2 people, things like that. Um, the Lewis gun, which is in the picture on the bottom, it did the same damage as the Maxim, but the thing is, it was a lot lighter, and that made it easier for soldiers to attack, set up, start shooting, and if they had to go a certain distance, they could do it easily, as opposed to the Hotchkiss, which was a lot heavier. It was really heavy, you know. The next one is the chemical weapons. Now, please don't confuse this with biological weapons, okay? Chemical weapons, when they started using gas and things like that. This is the first time in history chemical weapons are used. And I'm going to give you 2 examples of them that were very, very dangerous to people. All right, so the first one, I'm not going to kill this name. I've been practicing it, but diphoxygen. I think that's how you say it. I'm so sorry if I mispronounce it. Okay, but the thing is, it's a colorless organic compound, and it's easily condensed in liquid. And the thing is, when it's a gas form, it's extremely dangerous. It can easily kill you. The most well-known, most dangerous of the chemical weapons used was called mustard gas. Okay, this is a chlorine gas about 2.5 times denser than air. Um, it was green in color and had an odor that was described as a mixture of like pineapple and pepper. So if you have like some pepper at home and you have some like pineapple juice that's just laying around somewhere, mix them together really quick and take a whiff. And trust me, I've done this, and it kind of smells like, oh, what is that? Type of thing. But what would happen is once you breathe in the mustard gas, like if you took a big hit of it, water would fill your lungs. The water from your body would fill up your lungs, so it felt like you were drowning. And the thing is, even if you survived that, it would cause permanent lung damage to your lungs, that where you would have breathing troubles for the rest of your life. And if you say you didn't get away from it, you didn't recover from it, you basically died. You drowned in your own bodily liquids. Um, but if you were lucky enough to just get the outskirts of it, just like a wave came by really quickly, um, the smallest symptoms were coughing. You constantly coughing. Okay. Another one would be vomiting. You know, Another bad one was the eye irritation. Like if you got in your eyes really, you could. People said things would get foggy. It looked like there was like a permanent fog in front of them. Some people lost total sight. Or some people could only see like through a little area, through a little peephole type of thing. Um, that kind of stuff happened. It was really, really bad. Okay. The next one that was up was artillery. These are huge, huge weapons that can like shoot things from far away distance. The French had a 75 millimeter gun, but they also had a big one they called it Big Bertha. This thing is 400 plus millimeters. Um, just to give you an idea, it could take something that weighs 1,700 pounds and be able to shoot that thing about 6 miles away. Now, those guns, once they were set, they were set. It would take you all day to move that thing. So once they were set, that's it. That's where they're going to be. Um, and if the enemy was coming in, taking over the territory, they would just sabotage it. They would blow it up. They wouldn't even try to take it because it's too heavy. All right. Now, another thing too that was new and innovative was tanks. Tanks were just introduced in World War One. Now, they do not think of like the tanks nowadays. All right, the tanks we have nowadays are so sophisticated, they're so amazing. Back then, they were garbage. Okay, um, they always malfunctioned. Okay, but again, you have to remember they're brand new. People are just figuring them out. The designs were flawed, but they had an idea. Oh, and also, really quickly, this picture right here, just in case you're wondering why is there a picture of a tree? If you look right there on the side, that's not a branch that's sticking out. That's an artillery shell. And sometimes that's what happened in war when they would shoot off these bombs. They would shoot them off. They would get lodged in trees, stuck in the ground. Sometimes they would explode. Sometimes they wouldn't. And it wouldn't be till after the war when people would see this and people would try to take them out. They blow up. Same thing with minefields. People would find out, oh, dang it, there's a minefield right here. Nobody took out the bombs. So it was pretty dangerous even after the war. So here's your first couple questions. All right, there's two of them. One is, of all the land weapons, which do you feel had the greatest impact on World War One soldiers? Okay, which one do you think was like the best one to have? Or the one that did the most killing? Okay, so that's the first one. The second one is which weapon, thing like that, do you think had the least impact? Which one do you think was not that much effective? It wasn't that great. It's like, why even bother having that? And then why do you say that? Okay. So write your responses down. If you have to go back a little bit to see what the weapons were and stuff of that for the land, by all means, go back and check it. Okay. But we're moving on in 3, 2, 1. All right. So next is the battleships. The dreadnoughts were these warships that had large guns and could actually like do damage to other ships. You know, which usually they had lighter guns so they could reload faster. No, these were like, we're going to do damage, but again, lighter guns, they could reload faster. These bigger guns that could do damage, they took a little bit more while to reload. Now, the thing is, though, there was things called super dreadnoughts or these other battleships. They were larger, faster, and they carried 10 armor-piercing guns, but they also had those lighter guns. They had about 5 of them, so they could constantly shoot just enough to do some damage to something and make some holes in some other ships, you know. So they would kind of like trade off and things like that. Um, so they were well-rounded ships. The other ones were submarines. Okay, now submarines have been around for a while, but the thing is, they were so much more improved now. The best submarines were actually the Germans submarine, the U-boats. Um, in total, during World War One, they sank 6,394 ships. That's military, cargo, passenger ships, civilian ships. They only lost about 229. So if you do the math, that's basically like for every one submarine that went down, they destroyed 30 ships. So for every one submarine, like you see up on top there was 30 ships they took down. So that ratio is pretty good. Now, thing is, a lot of people were like, well, how do you get rid of a submarine? Back then, especially back then, how do you, if they're so much better? There was these things called depth charges. And there's a picture you can see up on the bottom. Um, Basically, there was these canisters of explosions. They would take uh, this little reel thing and click it. The clicks basically sit at this depth. Once it goes down this much, in feet and stuff like that, the thing would explode. You know, so they could set it for like 100 feet down, 50 feet down, 25 feet down, and they would launch them, or just drop them over the sides of the ship, and that's what they did. It worked. It was very effective against submarines. Now we come to the new invention, the aircraft. Airplanes were barely flyable. Okay, remember the Wright brothers created the airplane. They got it going, things like that. But as time moved on from the Wright brothers to now in World War One, the planes got improved a little bit, and then the military is basically looking at them going, "How can we use that machine in war? Let's mount a machine gun on there." So the best pilots, they were known as aces. That was their nickname. And they were nicknamed Knights of the Sky. Okay. Now, of all the pilots in World War One, there's one guy who stands out the best. His nickname is the Red Baron. To the British, they called him the Red Knight. To the French, they called him the Red Devil. But his real name is, I know I'm probably going to kill this, Manfred von Richthofen. Thing is, he has a confirmed 80 kills. That was like the best. That's still nowadays like a record, for a lot of people. That's like the bar. Like, hey, this is where you go to. Nowadays there's people with more, especially during World War II. But at that time, 80, it's like, dang. Okay. His squad was known as the Flying Circus, and there's a picture of him up on top there, and that's the bottom picture is a replica of his plane. He was killed in combat um, from gunfire down below. Okay, but yeah, the other military craft that was used was basically a blimp. To the Germans, they call them Zeppelins. Okay, these are airships that used long-range bombing missions, so they could be up in the air for quite a while. They would have bombs, and they would just. And the thing is, they could reach an altitude up in the air that other airplanes couldn't at that time. You know, they would be filled with hydrogen gas, and again, since hydrogen is lighter than air, it just lifted them up. Um, and again, it's not like just like a little balloon. They had steel reinforcements to keep the shape of the item, or the zeppelin, and they could travel about 85 miles per hour with 2 tons of bombs. So that was pretty impressive. Now to your next question. Which way would you rather fight? Would you rather fight in the air or in the ocean or sea? You know, would you rather fight in air or would you rather fight in the water? So not only think about fighting, but also think like if something happened and you're in a fight, in a war, which would you rather be in? You know, in the air or in the sea? And so tell me which one you chose and why did you choose that one? Why did you choose the air? Why did you choose the water? So think of like the submarines and the battleships, things like that for the ocean. Think about the planes and the zeppelins for air. Which one would you rather fight in and why? Okay. So pause the video, give your response, but we're moving on in three, two, one. All right. So April 15th, 1915, the Second Battle of Ypres. This is the first time that the poison chemical gas is used in war. Again, the soldiers on the Allied side, they don't know what's going on. They just see this gas coming through, and all of a sudden, these guys start vomiting. They start going blind. They can't see anything. They're suffocating. Again, the their own body is choking them out. Basically, the airways closing in. So gas masks, as you can see from this picture, it becomes a necessary part of the soldiers' equipment. So when they're in battle now and they see someone sees the green gas coming up, they shout out gas, gas, and these guys, I mean, in a heartbeat, start putting it on. If you have anybody in your family who's in the military, they still do these drills in the military. They teach them how to put their masks on. I mean, quick, fast, and in a hurry. Okay, so if you have anybody again who's in the military, ask them about this, and they'll tell you it sucks. They put them in a room and they do all this stuff. Okay, 1916, tanks are introduced, but like I said, they're slow, they're unreliable, they're not that great, and they're easy to destroy. They're not as good as they are now. Like I said, okay, they sucked. Um, Another little fact: no American ships, troop ships, were sunk. The German U-boats, they tried, but they didn't succeed. But here's a bad thing that happened, though. One of the allies are having problems in their own country, Russia. Their people are really upset at the government, saying, "You basically don't care about our citizens. You are recklessly joining this war. You're just recklessly, killing off our soldiers, and they're running out of food and fuel. So things are really bad in Russia." So this guy right here in the picture, this is Vladimir Lenin. He's the leader of the Bolshevik party, and they basically overthrow the Russian government. Okay, and they established a communist government. Now, once he takes over, he's like, okay, first thing we're gonna do is get out of this war. So March 3rd, 1918, the Treaty of the Brest-Litovsk, I guess how you say it, was signed in Germany. So basically, Russia's like, we're out of this war. We don't care. We're done. We won't fight you anymore. So now Germany's kind of happy about this. They're really happy because now they don't have to fight, France and Britain on this side, and they don't have to fight Russia anymore. Now they can focus all over here. And on top of that, because Russia wanted peace, they had to give up a lot of territory. Land in the Ukraine, Finland, Poland, and the Baltic area. So they lost quite a bit of territory. And like I said, now they could focus all their energies on this one part of the world. But still, it was tough. July 15th, 1918, the German troops, they're losing. They're losing bad. So what they decided to do is give it one last hoorah, push through, try to, give it everything they got. By attacking the French and American troops in the Second Battle of Marne. They really did, but the thing is, they didn't punch through. They didn't do as much damage as they were hoping for. They, gave it their all, and they're just like, oh, we can't no more. And then basically, like 3 days later, the French and Americans are like, dude, they're exhausted. They gave it that was their last push. So the French and Americans decide they're going to do their own push, and they basically knock Germany away. They just push them aside. So the war seems like it's basically going to be over. Now, President Wilson, the President of the United States, basically calls for what he called the 14 points. And one of these points was the League of Nations. This was basically to preserve peace and prevent future wars from happening by basically all these countries coming together, um, basically pledging to respect and protect each other's territory and political independence. So it's like, hey, I promise, hey, what you do in your area, that's you. You know, if there's a conflict, we'll find a peaceful resolution. So it's a pretty good idea. October 1918, the Ottoman Empire say, okay, we're done. We're out of this war. We're getting our butts kicked. So they sign a treaty with the Allies. August 4th, Austria-Hungary, the great and powerful Austria-Hungary, reach an armistice. Now, what that basically means is it's a truce. They basically say, okay, we're gonna stop fighting. We're not giving up, but we're gonna stop fighting. We're you know we're done. Okay, you don't kill us, we won't kill you, type of thing. And then a week later, Germany's like, what the heck? I joined this war because of you, and now you're saying, oh, I'm not gonna fight if you don't stop. If the Allies stop. So about a week later, Germany basically the same thing, except they didn't offer an armistice. They didn't offer a truce. They basically were forced to make a truce. Okay. So at the Paris Peace Conference, the Allies get together, stating their desire to basically rebuild, after the war and to stop any future wars from happening. Okay. Now, along the way, there's some resentment towards certain countries. So, June 28th, 1919, the Treaty of Versailles is signed, is basically stripped forces away from Germany. Germany can no longer have an army. Okay. Germany gets the worst of the punishment. Not only do they cannot they have not they cannot have an army, they can no longer, or they have to pay for every single dollar that was spent, not just by the Allies, but the Axis as well, or the Central Powers as well. And they have to acknowledge that they started the war. And everything that's went on, all the deaths that happened, they have to take responsibility for it. Again, they didn't start the war. That was Austria-Hungary and Serbia and all them. But because they stayed to the very end fighting, and remember I told you, France, in a sense, wanted revenge. This is their revenge. So again, Germany, no army, has to pay back everything for every country for World War One. They have to acknowledge they started the war and that everything that happened, all the deaths, destruction, all that is their responsibility. So when it came to the League of Nations, a lot of the countries, the leaders were like, you know what, this is a great idea. We should do this. Good job, America. Way to think of this. Where do we sign? Okay, Belgium signs it. France signs it. Russia signs it. Now it's like, United States, this is your idea. Here, you sign it. The United States doesn't sign it. The United States does not sign it, guys. So here's my question to you. Do you believe that the United States should have signed the League of Nations? Why or why not? What do you believe? What do you think? Okay. So go ahead, write it down what you believe, and we're moving on to the exit ticket in 3, 2, 1. All right, so here's your exit ticket question. Remember, if you have both US history and world history, you need to pick one for one class and then the other one for the other class, okay? So the first one says, why do you think Germany got such a bad and large punishment even though they didn't start the war? Why would Germany have to pay all that back and basically take responsibility for everything, even though it wasn't really them? Okay. So again, look back at the notes, and if you remember, even look at the where the treaty was signed with Russia. Where was that treaty signed? Okay. The second question says, with the war mainly fought in Europe, what do you think the European countries are going to do for the next 10 years? What do you think the United States will be doing? Because remember, this war was not fought in the United States. So what do you think they're going to be doing for the next like 10 years after the war? Okay. So explain your prediction, explain your reasoning, what your thinking is, okay? But once you're finished, you are done for the day. Okay, so hopefully you enjoyed this. Again, I know there's so much of World War One that I didn't put in because again, time is limited, time is short. Um, but we are going to be moving on. For you, world history, you guys are going to find out what happened to the rest of the world. This second question, you know, for the next 10 years, you're going to find that out next. You're going to see if your prediction is right. Okay. Um, so, you guys have a good day. You take care. You be safe. All right.